Everything that you do, say, pay attention to, speak into existence, it all matters. Every single piece of it has importance. And I'm going to show you how to make sure that every single thing that you spend time doing follows that impact. This is the only channel that we're going after the fathers and the men of the world and figuring out how do we forge ourselves through the process of becoming weapons for God's army while leading our family as the primary example, starting with the relationship that we have with our wives, followed by leading into our relationship with our kids, following the workforce, and letting every other piece of the world fall behind that. If we set those priorities and we make sure that men are being men of God, I guarantee we can change the world, and that's what I'm here to do with Forge Through Fire. So if you guys haven't already, hit the subscribe button down below so that you guys can get notified when new episodes come out so that we can grow together as men who are forging through the process. How, as men, can we sit down and look at things and go through the process of making every single thing important to us when really there's a lot of things that aren't important? And it's a very simple process that I use to determine what I should spend my time doing, what I should put my efforts into, and what level of mental energy I actually give something. There's a lot of things at the end of the day that you have to give mental energy to when you're a husband and a father that you might not love at the end of the day, but they have a value and an importance to the people around you. And how do I give that mental energy when it's not something that I care about is a big thing that a lot of men struggle with. I've struggled with it for the longest time. And I follow a really simple process. I have a very simple mindset behind if I don't like doing something, I'm not going to do it. And if I don't love doing something, I'm not going to develop it. And it's that simple. If I like doing something, I'm going to spend time doing it. And if I love doing something, I'm going to spend time developing it. The best analogy that I have of this is consider any sport that you play passively. I think of like bowling, right? Like something that most people enjoy doing just as an activity. And at the end of the day, I like bowling. I like spending time bowling. It used to be a really big hobby for me as a kid. And when you think of bowling as an activity that you enjoy doing, you have to think about, do I love bowling? Like I could get a coach inside of bowling. I could spend hours inside of a bowling alley. I could pour money into bowling. I could develop my skills inside of bowling. But I don't love bowling, so why would I spend the time to develop those skills? Why would I spend the time putting in that level of energy and that level of effort into something that I don't actually love doing? And so I need to think about it from the lens of I like it, so I can spend time doing it, but it doesn't mean I have to develop that thing. And now when I think about my relationship with my wife and my kids and how that pans out, or my relationship with God, I love my wife. I love my kids. I love Jesus. And so I need to spend time developing that. And sometimes this is the mindset that you have to have when you're thinking of your wife wants to tell you about the pair of shoes that she got, or your kid wants to show you the stick figure orange crayon drawing that they made. Like these things are things that like they're kind of important, kind of not important. They might not be what you want to spend your time doing. They may be what you want to spend your time doing, but think about something that like doesn't hold a lot of value to you, but it does to the people around you. Well, you don't have to love the thing that your spouse is talking about. You don't have to love the thing that your kid is talking about. You love your spouse. You love your kid, you love Jesus, so you spend the time developing that relationship. You spend the time developing that skill set. And the chronic crutch that men get into is we use the I have to do this for my family mindset. And at the end of the day, that's not true. When you're stuck doing things that you don't like doing, don't. If you're stuck doing things that you don't love doing, don't. Like, there's always another solution that you can find if you're willing to look for it. But a lot of men just get stuck thinking this is the only way that it is. This is just, I work this job because I have to. I work this job because it's the only thing for me. And it's like, that's not true. There's so many, live in the world of possibilities that you can go find to do anything that you want. And if you can't find the job that you want, you can go create the job that you want. We live in a world where you can literally create the business and the model and the job that you want if you're willing to pursue it. Because you love that thing, you can develop that thing. If that's your job, that's your job. If that's a workforce, that's a workforce. If that's your kids, that's your kids. But you got to figure out what are the things that you actually love. And at the end of the day, you can't identify those things if you don't have right priorities. And so you have to be able to sit down and identify what are the priorities that actually matter to you. What are the priorities in your life that are the most important? This is a great exercise to do with your wives, but at bare minimum, you should do it yourself as the man of the house. You should sit down and write out on a piece of paper if you were to put the number one priority in your life. What is the number one priority? Here's how I recommend doing this exercise. Start right now by identifying the things that you spend the most time, energy, effort, and money on right now. Write those things on a list from greatest to least. If it's job, and you spend the most time at your job out of anything else, and you don't give anything the amount of time that you give your job, write down job as number one. If you spend the most amount of money on your kids' sports, because that's the thing that you're spending the most money on right now, or traveling, or whatever it is, write down the things in order of the things that you're spending the most amount of money on, the most amount of time on, and the most amount of mental energy on. Then on a different piece of paper, write down on a list the things that are the top priorities to you. And I'll bet a lot of money that these two lists are very different right now inside of your life. And it's not because you're a bad person. It's not because you're a bad man. It's not because you're not trying. It's because as we go day to day in life, these things get flipped around. And we look at the things that we think are important that we don't like or love. And we put more mental energy, more physical time, and more money into those things. When really, if I sit down and I go, I love my kids the most, I want to develop them. Even if it's the things that I don't always want to be doing, right? Because I like playing sports. I like hunting. I like fishing. I like fill in the blank with whatever your activity is. I like hanging out with friends. I like going out. I like going to the movies. Whatever it is that you like doing, fill in the blank. I like those things. But I love my kids. I like all of those activities. None of them I actually care to develop, which means I don't need to give any of them my time if my time is not there. But I love my kids, which means that my kids come as a priority over the things that I like to do. And a lot of men do this backwards mindset of, I worked a job, therefore I deserve this capability to sit here and say that my likes are more important. If you're saying that your likes are more important than the things that you claim that you love, then you don't love the things that you say you love, and you love the things that you claim that you like. And there's an issue with that, and you need to do some mental self-reflection if that's your case. And I'm not doing this to be a jerk. I'm not sitting here trying to shun you for this. I get it. I've been backwards in my priorities too. But at the end of the day, every single thing that is on the list of likes never holds a value, never helps develop you, and never grows you into the man that God is calling you to be. Almost never, I should say. There are certain circumstances that are. Fishing will never make me the man that God wants me to be to go pursue other Christians and bring them closer to Him. Hunting alone in the woods is a great activity for my mental health being, but it is not something that develops and grows me. There's no part of me that is actually being developed, and I'm sure that there are some hunters and fishers who can argue that, but that's the point of view comparatively to if I spend the same amount of time with my kids. And I'm not saying don't do the things that you like, but I'm saying when your time is limited, and your time is very limited right now, we live in a world where everything is competing for our attention. I'm sitting here right now trying to gain your attention with this video. Everything that you do, you can scroll past, and you can go scroll for a couple hours on Instagram and Facebook and TikTok and whatever your poison is. You can go sit at the bar for a couple hours and be alone. You can go hang out with your buddies until 2 in the morning. At the end of the day, everything is competing for your attention. Your kids are with you for a very short amount of time. As fathers, our job is to spend that time with our kids. Our job is to be there and be present with our kids. Our wives are the only people in our lives that will be with us to the day we die. That is why wives rhymes with lives. It's not true, but I like saying that because my wife is my ride or die. She is the person that is with me. And here's the funniest way that I've ever heard somebody say it. Your wife is the only person in your life that chose you and loves you still. Every other person has a reason they love you, right? Your parents love you because you are their kid. Your kids love you because you are their parent. Your friends love you because they are your friend, but your wife loves you unconditionally, ultimately, as the person who chose you to be the person that she wants to spend the rest of her life with. She's somebody you should develop. What are you doing today to develop your wife? What are you doing today to develop your kids? So look at that list of the priorities that you claim are the most important thing. What are those most important priorities in your life? For me, the order goes very simply put: God, wife, kids, work, everything else. And I have a list of priorities beyond that, but it is that order is what is priority to me. If there's anything outside of things, but work is demanding my attention, it'll take priority if my kids, my wife, and God are not calling that attention. But if my kids need me in a time of work, I will choose my kids because I get my kids for 18 years and I'll work for the next 45. I only get my kids for this amount of time. 18 years is nothing in the scheme of things. I do not want to lose that time. And if my wife needs me, and this is where so many people get it wrong, is your wife is the greatest priority that you have on this earth. Your wife is the single greatest priority that you have on this earth. That is why God told us to treat our wives as Jesus treated the church, willing to lay our lives down for her. If you are not willing to lay your life down for your wife, you have a misalignment in your priorities according to what God calls us to pursue in our priorities. God first, wives second. Because there's not one other thing that you should be willing to lay your life down for. Outside of arguably your kids, yes. But every other thing in this world, if you were actually told to put it on the line, and you had to die to keep that thing in here, the amount of things that you're going to say yes to dying to are very small. And your wife should be on that list, Jesus should be on that list, and your kids should be on that list. And if they're not, spend some time finding and auditing your priorities so that you can go through the forging process today. Put yourself in the fire. Figure out what it is that needs to be melted away so that God can start chiseling you into the weapon that he needs you to be. Because right now, God has a calling on you to be the weapon inside of his army, and you're not listening because your priority is not where it needs to be. You have a purpose inside of God's army, inside of God's plan. You are neglecting the call because you're not willing to be forged by him. Stop refusing God's call, because if you don't answer, he's going to go call someone else. Answer the call from God. Set him as the number one priority. Set your wife as the number two priority, and set your kids as the number three priority. When you do this, watch how everything else in your life changes. Watch how everything falls into place easier. It's not going to be perfect. Believe me, it's not going to be perfect. But when you can put those priorities in place, I guarantee your finances will get a little bit more aligned. Your marriage will get a little bit better. Your relationship with your kids will definitely get better. And every other piece of your life will start to fall into a better, more organized, more complete feeling life. When everything is in the right area. And the times that your life feels the most out of control are the times that your priorities are the most out of line. Spend the time today to figure out where your priorities are. Figure out what you like. Figure out what you love. And figure out what it's going to take for you to make the priorities the number one thing that you're paying attention to every single day. I'll see you guys on the next one.